A 7-year-old girl climbs a construction site with her twin baby sisters tied to her and calls home saying, "Daddy, we won't need leftovers anymore." But the person who answers isn't her cruel stepfather. It's a billionaire CEO who was inspecting the site. Before we begin this incredible story, type Amen in the comments and tell me where you're from. Your support means everything. Let's connect. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Boston, where 7-year-old Madison Harper sat cross-legged on the worn linoleum floor, watching her twin baby sisters, Aria and Luna, crawl around their shared space. The apartment was small, claustrophobic even, with water stains on the ceiling and a persistent smell of mildew that no amount of cleaning could eliminate. At 2 years old, the twins were identical in every way. Same wispy blonde hair that curled slightly at the ends. Same bright blue eyes that sparkled with innocent curiosity despite the hardships they'd already endured. Same tendency to babble in their own secret twin language that Madison had learned to understand better than anyone else in the world, even their exhausted mother. Madison was unusual, though most wouldn't notice immediately. With her slight frame and oversized second-hand clothes, she could blend into any classroom. But behind observant eyes was a mind that processed information at astonishing rates. She taught herself to read at 3 by studying labels and street signs. By 5, she was solving complex math problems while other children struggled with counting. Recently, she'd discovered she could understand basic engineering by studying construction sites on her walks to school. Her mother, Claire, worked double shifts at Rosie's diner, her face perpetually etched with exhaustion and defeat. Claire had been beautiful once. Madison had seen photographs from before, when her mother's smile reached her eyes and her shoulders didn't carry the weight of the world. That was before Madison's biological father had disappeared when she was 2, before the mounting bills, before Raymond Tucker. Raymond had seemed like a solution when he first appeared 18 months ago. Steady warehouse job, his own apartment that didn't have broken windows, promises to help raise the 3 girls. But promises, Madison had learned, were just words adults used when they wanted something. Raymond wanted control, comfort, and the best of everything, especially food. The household rule was simple and cruel. Raymond ate first, ate the fresh food. Good meat, ripe fruit, warm bakery bread, all for Raymond. Claire and the girls got leftovers that sat in the refrigerator for days, bruised apples, stale bread. If there weren't enough leftovers, Raymond would shrug and suggest they appreciate what they had. Madison had stopped complaining months ago. Complaining made her mother cry, made Raymond's face turn that shade of red preceding lectures about ungrateful mouths and women who don't know their place. She'd learned to be strategic, to ensure Aria and Luna got the most nutritious scraps, but today was different. Today, Madison watched Raymond throw away half a roasted chicken while her sisters gnawed 3-day-old crackers. She watched him pour fresh milk down the sink because it was too close to expiration while she mixed powdered milk for the twins. She watched him discard fresh vegetables while her stomach growled with constant hunger. Something broke inside her. Not her spirit, that was too resilient. What broke was her willingness to accept this reality. She understood something many adults never grasped. Sometimes you had to create a crisis to force change. The idea had been forming for weeks, since discovering the abandoned construction site 4 blocks away. Taking the long way home from school, delaying her return to Raymond, she'd noticed the half-built structure. Construction had halted months ago due to financial disputes. The site was fenced, but Madison found a gap a small child could slip through. She'd explored carefully over several afternoons, cataloguing details. The steel framework rose 12 stories, a skeleton of a future tower. No walls, no windows, just exposed beams and concrete floors. Most importantly, an emergency stairwell winding through the center, Madison had climbed those stairs 3 times, each time going higher, testing courage and plan. On her last visit, she'd reached the 8th floor, stood looking over the city, feeling wind whip around exposed beams, and known this was where she'd make her stand. Her plan was precise, calculated with thinking that seemed impossible for 7, but came naturally to Madison. Take her sisters to the construction site, climb to the highest floor, call her mother's phone, the one Raymond always answered, monitoring every call. Say words that would finally make someone pay attention. "Daddy, we won't need leftovers anymore." Raymond wasn't their daddy. Madison didn't call him that, but she'd say it on the phone for impact, for drama. She wanted Raymond to feel that jolt of fear, realize his cruelty had consequences. She wanted him to rush there and see them, understand he'd pushed them so far. Madison wasn't actually going to jump. The thought was absurd. She had too much to accomplish, too many books to read, problems to solve. She would stand there until Raymond arrived, until he saw what his treatment had driven her to contemplate, then climb down safely and watch her mother finally find courage to leave him. It was theater. A performance designed to shock Raymond into revealing his true nature to neighbors, police, anyone who needed to see this man wasn't fit for their lives. Theater required props, and her most powerful prop was the twins. Aria and Luna were too young to understand, but their presence made the scene undeniable. A 7-year-old threatening harm might be dismissed as dramatic. A 7-year-old with 2 babies strapped to her body on a high construction site. That demanded action. The logistics were challenging, but not impossible. Madison had studied knot tying videos on the library computer. She'd practiced with bedsheets, creating slings that could safely hold toddler weight. She'd tested with her backpack full of books, checking knot integrity. She'd considered every variable. Twins' weight distribution, wind factor, climb time, positioning needed to keep everyone safe while looking dramatic. That evening, as Claire left for night shift and Raymond settled into his recliner with beer and chips, the good ones with real cheese powder Madison had only tasted once, she put her plan into motion. She waited until Raymond was engrossed in his action movie, then quietly, methodically gathered what she needed. 2 long scarves from the donation bag, the kind rich women discarded when they went out of style, her mother's old cell phone with cracked screen, water bottle, small packet of saved crackers. The twins were in their playpen, drowsy but not yet asleep. Madison approached them with a calm she didn't entirely feel, her heart racing but her hands steady. "Aria, Luna," she whispered in the soothing tone she'd perfected over months of being their primary caregiver, while her mother worked endless hours at the diner. "We're going on an adventure, a special adventure, just the 3 of us. But you have to be very, very quiet. Can you do that for Maddie? Can you be my brave, quiet girls?" The twins looked at her with those trusting blue eyes that never failed to make Madison's chest tighten with fierce, protective love. Luna made a soft, cooing sound, her chubby hand reaching toward Madison's face. Aria reached up her arms in that universal gesture of wanting to be held, her tiny fingers opening and closing. Madison's heart clenched painfully. For a moment, she questioned everything, her plan, her logic, her willingness to put these precious babies into even calculated danger. These babies were so small, so incredibly vulnerable, so dependent on her to keep them safe. What she was about to do was risky, even if she'd calculated every variable she could possibly think of. But then Raymond's voice from the living room. "That's what you get. Should have fought harder." She remembered his response when she'd asked if the twins could have fresh strawberries. He'd laughed, a mean sound without humor, and said with deliberate coldness, "Those are $10 a container, kid. Your sisters can eat when they contribute to this household." Madison's resolve hardened. She carefully lifted Aria first, positioning her against her chest in the makeshift sling. The scarf crisscrossed her back and shoulders, distributing weight. Aria nestled against her naturally. then Luna on her back, secured with the second scarf. The 2-year-olds were small for their age, another consequence of inadequate nutrition, which meant Madison could carry them, though it strained her small frame. She moved through the apartment with practiced silence. Raymond's attention was fixed on his movie, volume up. Mrs. Chen from 3B was taking out trash, glancing at Madison carrying the twins, smiling vaguely. People saw what they expected to see. A child with babies in slings looked like a child helping with childcare, not executing a desperate plan. The walk took 15 minutes, longer because of additional weight. The twins remained quiet, sensing this wasn't time for babbling. Evening air was cool, autumn beginning to assert itself. Streetlights flickered on as Madison walked, her shadow stretching long and thin. At the construction site, she slipped through the fence gap without difficulty. The site was deserted, as she'd known. She'd timed this carefully, late enough that workers were gone, early enough that sun hadn't completely set. The emergency stairwell was exactly as remembered. Madison began to climb, one careful step at a time. Weight made each flight more challenging, but she'd prepared. She paused on each landing to catch breath, check twins were secure, ensure scarves hadn't loosened. Arya fell asleep against her chest. Luna remained awake, little hands clutching Madison's shirt, eyes wide but trusting. By the time Madison reached the 12th floor, 4 floors higher than she'd ever climbed before, pushing herself beyond anything she'd tested, her legs trembled violently with exhaustion, her breathing came in ragged gasps, and sweat soaked through her clothes despite the cool evening air. But the view was exactly what she'd hoped for. From this height, she could see the entire neighborhood spread below, their apartment building, with the broken 3rd-floor window, the diner where her mother worked with its neon sign flickering to life, cars moving like toys on the streets. People went about ordinary routines, unaware that above them a child was staging a revolution. Madison moved carefully to the edge. No railing here, nothing but empty space beyond concrete. Wind was stronger at this height, tugging at clothes and hair. She positioned herself visible but several feet back from actual edge, close enough to look dangerous, far enough to be safe. She pulled out the phone and dialed her mother's number. The phone rang once, twice. Madison's heart pounded so hard she felt it in her throat. This was it. The moment her carefully constructed plan would unfold. She imagined Raymond's face hearing her words, panic replacing his sneer. She imagined sirens, crowds gathering, witnesses who would remember. She imagined her mother finally finding strength to walk away. The phone clicked. Someone answered. Madison opened her mouth to deliver her line, but the voice wasn't Raymond's gravelly bark. It was smooth, cultured, completely unfamiliar. "Hello? Claire's phone? This is Lawrence Castellano. Is this an emergency?" Madison's prepared words died in her throat. Lawrence Castellano. Everyone in Boston knew that name. CEO of Castellano Industries, technology and real estate empire owning half the city's prominent buildings. Magazine covers, business news segments. A billionaire, philanthropist, a man in circles so far removed from Madison's world, they might as well be different planets. What was he doing answering her mother's phone? For the first time since conceiving her elaborate plan, Madison felt something close to genuine fear. Not fear of heights or physical danger. She'd calculated those risks meticulously. This was fear that she'd miscalculated something fundamental, that there was a critical variable she hadn't accounted for. Her entire plan had been built around Raymond answering that phone. Raymond hearing those words, Raymond's panicked response bringing him here where witnesses would finally see his true nature. But Lawrence Castellano changed everything. He was a variable she couldn't have anticipated, a piece on the chessboard she hadn't known existed. What was someone like him, a billionaire CEO whose face appeared on magazine covers and business television, doing with her mother's phone on a construction site at this exact moment? Had he somehow discovered what she was planning? Was this coincidence or something more sinister? Or was this just the universe's way of showing her that even the most carefully laid plans could veer wildly off course? Wind gusted around her, and Luna whimpered softly. Madison's mind raced, trying to recalculate, to understand. Why did Lawrence Castellano have her mother's phone? Where was Raymond? What had she missed? "Hello?" the voice said again, and this time Madison heard something in it. Concern, urgency. "Is someone there? If you're in trouble, please talk to me." Madison's throat felt tight. She was supposed to say her line, supposed to trigger the response that would bring Raymond running, expose his cruelty, end their nightmare. But Lawrence Castellano wasn't Raymond. He didn't know anything about leftovers or hungry children or casual cruelty disguised as discipline. The words came out before she could stop them, her voice smaller and younger than intended. "Daddy, we won't need leftovers anymore." Sharp intake of breath on the other end. Then in a voice suddenly razor-focused, "Where are you? Tell me exactly where you are right now." Lawrence Castellano's day had been proceeding with calculated precision until approximately 6:30 in the evening, when everything he understood about the world tilted on its axis. He was 43 years old, extraordinarily successful by any objective measure, yet increasingly aware that something fundamental and essential was missing from his carefully ordered life. He'd been married once, briefly and disastrously, in his late 20s, to a woman named Victoria, who'd been attracted to his rising fortune and promising future, rather than to him as a person. When she'd left, taking a generous divorce settlement and a promise that he'd never contest the split, she'd said something that had haunted him through every subsequent success. "You're not actually living, Lawrence. You're just successfully existing. You're like a beautifully programmed machine that does everything right but feels nothing real." The words had stung then, and they continued to sting now, especially in quiet moments when he stood alone in his penthouse, surrounded by every luxury money could buy, but utterly empty of anything that truly mattered. He'd built an empire, changed skylines, employed thousands, but he couldn't remember the last time he'd done something that made him feel genuinely alive rather than merely accomplished. The construction site he was inspecting that evening was the Riverside Tower project, stalled for months but recently acquired by his company. Walking the 10th floor, he'd noticed a gap in perimeter fencing and heard something unusual, a child's voice from somewhere above. Debating whether to investigate, his foot struck something, a cell phone, old model, cracked screen, lying face up on concrete. He'd picked it up and it started ringing. The name on screen, home. "Hello? Claire's phone. This is Lawrence Castellano. Is this an emergency?" Silence that made him uncomfortable. Then a child's voice, thin and stressed. "Daddy, we won't need leftovers anymore." The tone made Lawrence's blood run cold. That was the voice of a child on the edge of something terrible. "Where are you? Tell me exactly where you are right now." "Up." Lawrence's eyes shot upward, scanning exposed floors above. "I'm at the Riverside Tower construction site. Are you here, in this building?" "Yes, I'm up high. You need to come, but don't bring the police, not yet. I need someone to understand." And every protocol screamed at him to call 911, but something stopped him. There was intelligence in that voice, calculation. This was planned. "Okay, no police yet. I'm coming to you. Tell me which floor and stay on the phone." 12th floor, the highest one with a floor. There are babies with me. My sisters, they're only 2. I have them safe, but they're here, and I needed someone to know that we existed, that we matter, that we're not just leftover people. Lawrence hit the stairwell, taking steps 2 at a time. Leftover people. What kind of household created a child who thought that way? "You matter. You and your sisters matter very much. What's your name?" "Madison. Madison Harper. I'm 7 years old. Arya and Luna are my sisters. They're twins, they're only 2, and they're the most important people in my whole world. And Mr. Castellano, because I know who you are. I looked you up on the library computer after I heard your name. You're very famous and you're on all the business magazines. I'm not stupid. I'm not going to jump off this building. That was never the plan, not for one single second. I just needed to make someone see us. I needed to make him understand what he was doing to us, to make him feel even a tiny fraction of the fear and hunger and worthlessness that he makes us feel every single day. Him? Who? Madison, has someone hurt you? Not hit us. But there are other ways to hurt kids. Like making them eat 3-day-old food while you throw away fresh groceries. Like telling their mom that they're burdens right in front of them. Lawrence reached the 8th floor, legs burning. 4 more to go. Madison, I hear you, I see you, but right now, I need you to step back from the edge. I'm not at the edge. I'm 3 feet back. Far enough to look dramatic, close enough to be safe. I calculated it. Of course she had. Lawrence almost laughed, a sound that would have been half hysteria. A 7-year-old who calculated her own crisis intervention. By the time he reached the 12th floor, his heart pounded from exertion and genuine fear about what he might find. His expensive dress shirt soaked with sweat, despite the cooling evening air, his carefully maintained composure completely shattered. And there she was, a tiny figure silhouetted against the darkening sky, with 2 even smaller figures, somehow strapped securely to her body in fabric slings. Madison Harper was significantly smaller than expected for 7, almost fragile with her slight build. Her blonde hair whipped wildly in the wind, catching the last rays of sunset. Her oversized clothes, a faded pink jacket, clearly meant for someone twice her size, and jeans rolled up multiple times at the ankles, hung awkwardly, making her look even more vulnerable. The toddlers were secured with designer scarves, expensive Hermes pieces that had probably cost hundreds of dollars new, repurposed with impressive knotwork as baby carriers, an incongruous detail that spoke volumes about the complexity of their circumstances. Madison, Lawrence said softly, keeping his distance. I'm here, I see you. All 3 of you. This ends tonight. Madison's face crumpled. I just wanted him to see. I just wanted someone to care that we're hungry all the time. I'm 7. I shouldn't have to be the only one trying to fix this. You're right, and you're not anymore. Lawrence took a slow step forward. Let me carry one of your sisters. You must be exhausted. Madison nodded, tears tracking down her cheeks. Lawrence carefully unknotted the scarf holding Luna and lifted the toddler. Luna looked at him with bright blue eyes, then touched his face as if confirming he was real. With Luna secure, he helped Madison sit. She was trembling. He pulled out his phone. Madison watched with sudden wariness. You said no police. I said not yet. But Madison, we do need to call someone. What you've described is neglect. It's abuse. People whose job it is to protect children need to know. But what if they take us away? What if foster care is worse? Lawrence looked at this remarkable child and made a life-altering decision. What if I promised you that I would personally ensure you and your sisters are placed somewhere safe? I have resources, significant resources, and I'm choosing to use them for you. Madison studied his face with unnerving intensity. Finally, she nodded. Okay. But my mom can't know I did this on purpose. She'll blame herself. Can you make it look like an accident? Lawrence looked into those 2 old eyes and nodded. I can do that. But you have to promise me you'll never do anything this dangerous again. I promise. He made several calls, first to security, then his attorney, finally to 911. He kept the story simple. He'd found 3 girls who'd wandered onto the property. Sirens began to wail in the distance. Are you going to adopt us? Madison asked suddenly, with the kind of blunt, direct honesty that only children possessed, cutting through social niceties and polite euphemisms to get straight to the heart of what she wanted to know. Lawrence blinked, completely caught off guard by the question. What, Madison? That's not... you're rich, really rich. You're single. The internet says you're Boston's most eligible bachelor, which I think means you're not married, and lots of women want to date you. You don't have any kids of your own. And you seem nice, in a serious business kind of way. Plus, you came running up 12 flights of stairs to save 3 kids you'd never met before. That seems like excellent dad material to me. So I'm asking, are you going to adopt us? Because if Raymond is gone, and I think he will be after tonight, and if my mom is working as much as she does just to keep us fed and housed, we're going to need help. Real help, not just social worker visits and government assistance forms. And you're here. You answered my call. You came running without even knowing who I was. That has to mean something, doesn't it? Lawrence found himself completely speechless, a rare occurrence for a man who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals and spoken at international business conferences. This 7-year-old child had just articulated a question that cut through every defense mechanism he'd built around his carefully controlled life, exposing the loneliness he'd been denying for years. Let's start with getting you and your sisters somewhere safe and warm, he managed finally, his voice rougher than he intended, thick with emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in far too long. And then we'll see what happens next. But Madison, I want you to know something important. What you've been through, what you're still going through, it ends tonight. Whether I adopt you or not, whether your mother stays with Raymond or leaves him, whether social services gets involved or not, your life is going to be different from this moment forward. I'm making you that promise right now, and I don't break my promises, ever. Do you understand me? Madison nodded, leaning against him. The sirens grew louder. Lawrence's carefully controlled life had just become impossibly complicated. Yet as he sat there with wind picking up around them, he felt something he hadn't in years, the sense that he was exactly where he needed to be. The ambulance arrived with police and fire trucks. Lawrence carried the children down to the 8th floor, where paramedics checked them over. Madison was wrapped in a thermal blanket and given water and crackers, which she immediately tried to share with her sisters. Officer Patricia Rodriguez questioned them. Lawrence stuck to their agreed story. He'd heard a voice, found Madison on the 12th floor with her sisters. Madison delivered her lines perfectly. They'd been exploring, got scared, couldn't find their way down. "We need to contact your parents," Rodriguez said. Madison gave her mother's number. Rodriguez called, spoke briefly, hung up, looking concerned. "Your mother is on her way. She said your stepfather had her phone." Rodriguez turned to Madison. "Are you safe at home? Has anyone hurt you?" Madison's expression was perfect innocence. "No, ma'am, we're fine. I just made a mistake." But Rodriguez wasn't fooled. She saw the markers. Madison's thin frame, the twins' hand-me-down clothes, the protective positioning. "Mr. Castellano, I'd like to ensure these children are properly evaluated. Would you be willing to have social services involved?" "Absolutely." 20 minutes later, Claire Harper burst through the perimeter. Younger than Lawrence expected, early 30s, in her waitress uniform, face etched with panic. "Madison, what were you thinking?" Claire pulled all 3 girls into a fierce hug, tears streaming. Madison looked at Lawrence over her mother's shoulder. "Don't tell her." Lawrence gave a tiny nod. "Mrs. Harper," Rodriguez said gently, "we need to ask about your daughter's care." "I was at work. Raymond was supposed to be watching them." Claire's voice was defensive, expecting judgment. "Raymond Tucker, my boyfriend, he said he'd be home." Claire looked confused. "Where's my phone?" Rodriguez produced the device Lawrence had found. "Mr. Castellano found it at the scene." Claire took it, bewildered. But I left this at home with Raymond. Why would it be here unless he came looking and dropped it? Where is he? 20 minutes later, Raymond Tucker arrived. Large, heavily built, face flushed, smelling of alcohol. Claire, what the hell is going on? Our daughters were found on a construction site 12 floors up. Where were you? Raymond's expression shifted. I was home. They were in the playpen. I went to shower, and when I came out, they were gone. I've been driving around looking. It was a lie. Lawrence knew it. Rodriguez knew it. Mr. Tucker, have you been drinking? One beer to calm my nerves. Is that a crime? Can you explain why Mrs. Harper's phone was found at the construction site? Raymond went blank, caught, but instead of confessing, he attacked. I don't know about that phone. Maybe Claire lost it. She's always losing things. Honestly, officer, I'm the one holding this family together. Claire went white. Madison went red with fury, starting forward. Lawrence stepped in, hand on Madison's shoulder. I think this conversation should take place away from the children, Lawrence said quietly. Rodriguez nodded. Mr. Tucker, come to the station with me for a statement. Mrs. Harper, you can take your daughters home. Claire looked torn. Mum, no, Madison said firmly. We should go home. Aria and Luna need sleep. Claire made her decision. Okay, we'll go home. Raymond shot Madison a cold, threatening look before following Rodriguez. As the police car pulled away, Lawrence approached Claire and pressed his business card into her hand. Mrs. Harper, I'm Lawrence Castellano. I own this site and found your daughters. I'd like to speak with you tomorrow about ensuring this doesn't happen again. I have resources that might help. Claire stared at the card. You're Lawrence Castellano, the billionaire? Please call me tomorrow, it's important. Madison tugged Lawrence's sleeve and mouthed, Thank you. Lawrence drove home to his penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor, unable to settle. He stood at the windows, thinking about 3 girls who ate leftovers and a 7-year-old who'd calculated precise distance from danger. His phone buzzed. Sir, I've reviewed the security footage. You need to see this. Send it to my personal laptop. Don't share it with anyone. 10 minutes later, Lawrence watched a small figure carrying 2 babies through the fence gap, moving with deliberate purpose. The footage showed Madison had known exactly what she was doing. Lawrence watched 3 times, then encrypted and saved it. Someday Madison might be ready to know he knew the truth, but for now he'd keep her secret. He set a reminder for 9 a.m. Call Claire Harper. Begin keeping your promise. Then Lawrence Castellano, CEO and unexpected guardian angel, went to bed. But sleep didn't come easily. He kept seeing Madison's eyes, too old, too determined, and wondering what kind of child had the courage to risk everything just to force someone to see that they mattered. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, he would make sure of it. The morning after the construction site incident arrived with crisp autumn sunlight. Lawrence had barely slept, replaying the evening's events. At precisely 9 a.m., he called Claire Harper. Mrs. Harper, this is Lawrence Castellano. I wanted to follow up and see how you and your daughters are doing. There was a long pause. When Claire spoke, her voice trembled. Mr. Castellano, Raymond left this morning. Packed a bag and walked out. Said he couldn't deal with the drama, that he never signed up to raise someone else's kids. He told me I have until month's end to find somewhere else, since the apartment's in his name. Lawrence's jaw tightened. Mrs. Harper, I'd like to meet with you today. I have resources and options to discuss. Would you be available this afternoon? I work the lunch shift, but I could meet you at 3. There's Moretti's coffee shop on Camden Street. I'll be there. At Moretti's, Lawrence found Claire and Madison in a corner booth. The twins were with a neighbor. Thank you for meeting me, Lawrence said. I'm going to be direct, because that's what this situation requires. You need help, and I'm in a position to provide it. The question is whether you'll accept it. Why would you want to help us? We're nobody to you. You're 3 children who deserve better, Lawrence said simply. First, housing. I own a 3-bedroom apartment in Brighton. It's yours, rent-free for 6 months. Second, I want CPS to evaluate the girl's safety. Third, medical checkups for all 3. And fourth, a social worker to connect you with resources. What do you get out of this? Claire asked suspiciously. The knowledge that 3 children are going to be okay. The chance to make a real difference. And honestly, the answer to whether I'm actually living my life or just existing through it. Madison took her mother's hand. Mum, we should say yes. Mr. Castellano kept his promise last night. I think we can trust him. Claire's tears fell. Yes, Mr. Castellano. Yes, we'll accept your help. Thank you. Over the next week, Lawrence orchestrated a rescue operation. The Brighton apartment was furnished and stocked with real food. Claire's belongings were moved by professionals. Social worker Janet Torres became their advocate. Medical checkups showed nutritional deficiency, but confirmed recovery was possible with proper care. Raymond signed away parental rights without hesitation, removing his toxic presence permanently. Lawrence found himself visiting frequently. He'd watch Madison read to her sisters, see Claire's shoulders lose their tension, play with the twins. Something warm expanded in his chest during these visits. 3 weeks later, Madison waited for him on the building's front steps. It was early November, just 2 days after her 8th birthday, a milestone celebrated with a real cake that she'd actually gotten to eat while it was still fresh, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her. I need to talk to you about something important, she announced. Lawrence sat beside her. I'm listening. You know what I did, don't you? You know it wasn't an accident. Yes, Lawrence said finally. I've seen the footage, but I haven't told anyone, and I'm not going to. What you did was dangerous and desperate, but I understand why. Are you angry? No. I'm sad you felt you had no other option, and grateful I was there. But Madison, promise me that if you ever feel that desperate again, you'll come to me first. I promise. And Lawrence, thank you for not letting us fall. You're welcome, and you can call me Lawrence if you want. She smiled, truly carefree for the first time. Okay, but I still think you should adopt us. Lawrence laughed. Your mother is doing an excellent job. Maybe not need, Madison said thoughtfully. But maybe want. My mum likes you. She smiles different around you, and you like her too, and Arya and Luna already love you. Yesterday, Luna said, La la. Madison Harper, are you playing matchmaker? I'm 8 years old, and my IQ is probably higher than yours, Madison said matter-of-factly. I'm not playing anything. I'm observing patterns and drawing logical conclusions. You're lonely. Mum's lonely. You make each other less lonely together. That seems worth pursuing. Lawrence couldn't argue. She was right. You're remarkable, Madison. You see me. Really see me. That's another reason I want you in our lives. I'm not going anywhere, Madison, I promise. Madison nodded, satisfied. Do you want dinner with us? Mom made real meatloaf. I'd love to, Lawrence said. The apartment had transformed, drawings on the refrigerator, books on shelves, signs of life everywhere. Claire was cooking, the twins playing. Lawrence! Claire's face lit up. I didn't know you were coming. I invited him, Madison said. As they sat around the table, Lawrence realized this was living, not just existing. This was family. Madison caught his eye and gave him a knowing look. And maybe, Lawrence thought, being seen clearly by an 8-year-old genius was exactly what he needed. 3 months passed, and the transformation in the Harper household was remarkable. Claire had been promoted to assistant manager at the diner, a position that came with better hours and significantly better pay. Madison had been enrolled in a gifted program at a nearby school where her exceptional abilities were finally being properly challenged and nurtured. Uriah and Luna were thriving. They'd celebrated their third birthday in late January with their first real party, complete with balloons, cake, and other toddlers. Their vocabulary was expanding daily, their energy boundless in the way that healthy, happy 3-year-olds should be. Lawrence had become hopelessly entangled with this family. One December morning, he arrived early with coffee and pastries from Claire's favorite bakery. He let himself in with the key she'd given him, a gesture that had felt monumentally significant. Claire sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, her expression troubled. "Hey," she said, looking up as he entered. "You're early." "I brought breakfast," Lawrence said, setting down the bags. "What's wrong? You look worried." Claire gestured at the papers. "It's my lease. The 6-month rent-free period ends next month, and I need to figure out if I can afford to stay here. The monthly rent is reasonable for Boston, but even with my promotion, it would stretch my budget uncomfortably tight." "Don't sign that," Lawrence said immediately. Claire's face fell. "Oh, so you want us to move? That's okay, I understand. You've already done so much, and we can find something smaller, maybe farther out where rent is cheaper." "No," Lawrence interrupted. "That's not what I meant. Don't sign that because I'm going to have my property manager draw up a different agreement, one with a rent you can actually afford comfortably." "Lawrence, you've already given us 6 months free. I can't accept more charity." "It's not charity," Lawrence said, and then he took a breath, knowing he was about to step off a cliff. "Claire, can we talk? Really talk?" She looked at him with those tired but beautiful eyes. "Of course." Lawrence sat down across from her, choosing his words carefully. "These past 3 months have been the best months of my life. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's absolutely true. Before I met you and your daughters, I was successful, but completely empty inside. I had everything money could buy, but nothing that actually mattered. And now I have this. Saturday morning coffee runs and dinner at a table with children who aren't even mine, but somehow feel like they are. I have Madison talking my ear off about advanced physics concepts. I have Luna calling me La La, and Aria trying to put clips in my hair. I have you making me laugh and teaching me that there's more to life than business deals and profit margins." Claire's eyes were wide, her coffee forgotten. "Lawrence, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that I'm in love with you," Lawrence said simply. "I'm in love with your strength and resilience and the way you fought so hard to give your daughters a better life. I'm in love with your laugh and your kindness and the way you sing when you cook. And I'm in love with your daughters, all 3 of them, in a way I never expected to love children. They've become my family somehow, and I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose any of you." Claire's hand went to her mouth, tears spilling over. "Lawrence, I feel the same way, but it's so fast and I have so much baggage, and 3 kids is a lot to take on, and what if—" "I know exactly what I'm taking on," Lawrence said firmly. "I'm taking on a brilliant 8-year-old who's already planning our future. I'm taking on 2 3-year-olds who are exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. I'm taking on school plays and parent-teacher conferences, and the possibility that my business associates might judge me for choosing to be with a single mother instead of some society woman they'd approve of. And Claire, I'm choosing all of it, gladly, enthusiastically, because this, what we have here, is real in a way nothing else in my life has ever been." "Are you asking me to marry you?" Claire whispered. "Not yet," Lawrence said with a slight smile. "I think we should probably date officially first. Maybe get through at least 1 full year before we make it legal. But yes, Claire, eventually I want to marry you. I want to adopt your daughters if you'll let me. I want to build a life together, the kind of life where nobody ever has to choose between fresh food and paying rent, where brilliant children get every opportunity they deserve, where you never have to work yourself to exhaustion just to survive." Claire was openly crying now. "This doesn't feel real. Things like this don't happen to people like me." They do now, Lawrence said, reaching across the table to take her hands. They're happening right now. Say yes, Claire. Say yes to letting me be part of your family officially. Say yes to building something together. Yes, Claire said through her tears. Yes, absolutely yes. They were kissing across the kitchen table, laughing and crying simultaneously when Madison's voice cut through the moment. Finally! Do you know how exhausting it's been watching you two dance around each other for 3 months? I've been this close to just locking you both in a room until you figured it out. Lawrence and Claire broke apart to find Madison standing in the doorway, arms crossed, looking entirely too satisfied with herself. How long have you been standing there? Claire asked. Long enough to hear Lawrence say he loves us, which I already knew, and to hear you say yes, which I also predicted. I calculated the probability of this outcome at approximately 94% after the first month. Madison walked over and inserted herself between them at the table. So now that the adults have finally caught up to what I figured out in October, can we talk about logistics? Because if Lawrence is going to be our dad, and let's be honest, that's where this is heading, then we need to establish some ground rules and expectations. Lawrence laughed, genuinely delighted. Ground rules. Okay, Madison. What did you have in mind? First, I want your last name, Madison said seriously. Harper Castellano has a nice ring to it. Second, I want to visit your company headquarters and understand exactly what Castellano Industries does. If I'm going to be part of this family, I should understand the business. Third, Aria and Luna are going to need trust funds for college, and I've already researched the optimal investment strategies. Madison, Claire interrupted gently, maybe let's not negotiate the entire future over breakfast. Why not? The sooner we establish clear parameters, the better for everyone. I've actually prepared a presentation. Madison produced a small notebook from seemingly nowhere. I have charts. Lawrence looked at Claire, saw the mixture of amusement and exasperation on her face, and felt his heart swell with love for this chaotic, brilliant, wonderful family. Let's see the charts, he said. But first, let's wake up your sisters and tell them they're getting a new dad. I think that's the most important thing. The look on Madison's face, pure joy mixed with relief and hope, was something Lawrence knew he would remember for the rest of his life. This child who'd been forced to grow up too fast, who'd carried the weight of protecting her family on 7-year-old shoulders, could finally just be a child. She could be brilliant and weird and intense without having to also be the only adult in the room. The twins' reaction to the news was predictably toddler-like. Luna repeated, "Lar, lar," with great enthusiasm, while Aria clapped her hands and demanded to be picked up immediately. They didn't fully understand what was happening, but they understood that everyone was happy, and that was enough for them. Over the following weeks, Lawrence began the formal process of integrating his life with the Harpers. He introduced Claire and the girls to his small circle of close friends who were universally charmed by Madison's precocious intelligence and the twins' chaotic energy. He started spending most nights at the Brighton apartment rather than his empty penthouse, finding that he slept better on Claire's modest couch than he ever had in his $1,000 mattress. The business community's reaction to Lawrence Castellano's relationship with a diner manager and her 3 children was mixed. Some saw it as a heartwarming human interest story. Others whispered about gold diggers and questioned his judgment. Lawrence discovered that he didn't care even slightly what they thought. For the first time in his adult life, he was making decisions based on what made him happy rather than what looked good on paper or maintained his carefully crafted image. The legal proceedings for adoption began in early spring. Lawrence hired the best family law attorney in Boston, determined to ensure that the process went as smoothly as possible. Raymond Tucker had already signed away his parental rights, which eliminated one potential complication. The remaining hurdle was demonstrating to the court that this arrangement was in the best interests of the children. The court-appointed evaluator, who came to assess the family situation, found 3 healthy, happy, thriving children and 2 adults, who were clearly devoted to each other and to the girl's well-being. Her report was glowing. Madison's exceptional academic progress was documented, as was the twins' healthy development. Claire's financial stability and emotional well-being had improved dramatically. The evaluator concluded that Lawrence Castellanos' involvement had been transformative for this family in every measurable way. The adoption hearing was scheduled for June, nearly a year after that fateful evening at the construction site. The courtroom was smaller than Lawrence had expected, more intimate. It wasn't the imposing, intimidating space of criminal trials. This was family court, where life-changing decisions were made with more compassion than drama. Lawrence sat at the front table next to Claire, their hands intertwined. Behind them, Madison sat with Janet Torres, the social worker who'd been such a consistent source of support. Aria and Luna were with a trusted babysitter. At 3 years old, they were too young for the formality of legal proceedings. Judge Helen Morrison presided, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a reputation for being thorough but fair. She'd reviewed all the documentation, read every report, studied every detail of this unconventional family's journey. "Mr. Castellano," she began, "I've read your petition to adopt Madison, Aria, and Luna Harper. I've also read the extensive documentation provided by social services, the evaluator's report, and letters of support from teachers, medical professionals, and community members. Before I make my decision, I'd like to hear from you directly. Why do you want to adopt these children?" Lawrence stood, his usual boardroom confidence tempered by genuine emotion. "Your Honor, I want to adopt these children because they've already adopted me. A year ago, I had everything money could buy, but nothing that actually mattered. I was successful but empty. Then I met Madison in the most extraordinary circumstances. Circumstances that taught me that sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you need to be at exactly the right moment. Madison is brilliant and brave and carries the weight of the world on her shoulders, even though she's only 8 years old now. Aria and Luna are joyful and loving and deserve every opportunity to grow up in a stable, secure home. And their mother, Claire, is the strongest, most devoted parent I've ever encountered. She fought so hard to protect her daughters even when she had almost nothing. I want to adopt these children because loving them and being part of their family has made me a better man. I want to give them my name, my resources, and my absolute commitment that they will never face hardship alone again." Judge Morrison nodded slowly. "Ms. Harper, do you consent to this adoption?" Claire stood, wiping tears from her eyes. "Yes, Your Honor, completely. Lawrence has been a blessing to our family. He's been more of a father to my girls in 1 year than their biological father ever was in their entire lives. I trust him absolutely, and I want him to be their legal father." "And Madison," Judge Morrison said, looking past the adults to where Madison sat with her characteristic intensity, "I understand you're quite mature for your age. I'd like to hear from you as well. How do you feel about Mr. Castellano adopting you and your sisters?" Madison stood up, surprisingly small in the formal setting, but radiating confidence. "Your Honor, I should probably tell you the full truth about how I met Lawrence. Everyone's been very careful to keep it vague, but I think you deserve to know the complete story before you make your decision." Lawrence's heart stopped. Claire turned pale. Janet Torres looked alarmed. "Madison," Lawrence started, but Judge Morrison held up a hand. "Let her speak, Mr. Castellano. Madison, what truth do you want to share?" Madison took a deep breath. "A year ago, I made a very dangerous, very desperate decision. I took my baby sisters to a construction site and climbed to the 10th floor because I wanted to force my mother's boyfriend to see what his emotional abuse was doing to us. I planned to make him think we might jump so that police would come, witnesses would see, and my mom would finally have the courage to leave him. I calculated every detail, positioned myself safely, and made a phone call, but the wrong person answered. Or maybe the right person, depending on how you look at it. Lawrence answered, and instead of calling the police immediately and turning my plan into a disaster, he came to get us himself. He kept my secret. He protected me from the judgment that would have come if people knew I'd staged the whole thing. And then he kept his promise to help us, even though he didn't have to, even though we were complete strangers. The courtroom was completely silent. Judge Morrison's expression was unreadable. "I'm telling you this now," Madison continued, "because if Lawrence is going to be my legal father, you need to know that he's the kind of man who will protect his children even when they've done something dangerous and stupid. You need to know that he saw me at my most desperate and most calculating, and he still chose to love me. That's the kind of father he is. That's the kind of father my sisters and I need. So yes, Your Honor, I absolutely want Lawrence Castellano to adopt us. He already is our dad in every way that matters. This is just making it official." Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Lawrence. "Did you know she was planning to confess this today?" "No, Your Honor, I had no idea," Lawrence said honestly. "Though I should have anticipated it. Madison has a strong sense of justice and hates dishonesty, even when that dishonesty was protecting her. And Ms. Harper, were you aware of what Madison actually did that night?" Claire shook her head, fresh tears streaming. "I suspected it wasn't an accident. Madison's too smart for accidents. But I was afraid to ask, afraid to know. I've failed my daughters in so many ways." "Stop," Judge Morrison said firmly. "Ms. Harper, from what I've read in these reports, you've been working 3 jobs at times to keep your children fed and housed. You've been surviving an abusive relationship while trying to protect your daughters from the worst of it. You haven't failed them. You've kept them alive and loved until someone could help you carry the burden." "That's not failure, that's heroism." Claire collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. Lawrence put his arm around her shoulders, holding her steady. Judge Morrison looked at Madison again. "Young lady, what you did was extremely dangerous. You could have been seriously hurt or worse. Do you understand that?" "Yes, Your Honor. I understand it better now than I did then. I would never do something like that again. I have people to talk to now. I have Lawrence, and my mom is safer and happier, and I don't have to be the only one protecting my sisters anymore. I can just be a kid sometimes. Good, because you deserve to be just a kid." Judge Morrison shuffled her papers, then looked up with the slightest smile. "Here's what I think. I think this family has been through something extraordinary and come out stronger for it. I think Madison Harper is possibly the most remarkable 8-year-old I've ever encountered, which is either going to lead to a Nobel Prize or significant parental grey hair, possibly both. I think Aria and Luna deserve stability and security. And I think Lawrence Castellano stumbled into something that changed his life, and he had the wisdom to embrace it rather than run from it." She picked up her gavel. "Therefore, it is the order of this court that the petition for adoption is granted. Lawrence Castellano is hereby recognized as the legal father of Madison Harper, Aria Harper, and Luna Harper, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Their names will be changed to Harper Castellano as requested. Congratulations to the Castellano family." The gavel came down with a decisive crack. The small group erupted in celebration. Claire was crying and laughing simultaneously. Janet Torres was beaming. Madison allowed herself a rare, unguarded smile of pure joy. And Lawrence felt something shift fundamentally in his chest. A sense of rightness and purpose that he'd been searching for his entire adult life. They were a family. Legally, officially, irrevocably. The celebration continued at a restaurant Lawrence had rented out for the occasion. Friends and supporters filled the space. Claire's co-workers from the diner, Madison's teachers from the gifted program, Janet Torres and other social workers who'd helped along the way. Even a few of Lawrence's business associates who'd embraced his unconventional new family with genuine warmth. Aria and Luna were there too, wearing matching dresses and creating cheerful chaos as three-year-olds did. They didn't fully understand what had happened in the courtroom, but they understood that everyone was happy and that they were the center of attention, which was perfectly satisfactory to them. Lawrence found a quiet moment with Madison near the end of the evening. "That was quite a revelation in court today. You took a big risk telling the judge the truth." "I know," Madison said, "but it felt dishonest to let you adopt us with that big secret hanging over everything. And I wanted the judge to understand who you really are, someone who protects his family even when it's complicated. That's important. You're an extraordinary person, Madison Harper Castellano. I hope you know that." "I'm just me," Madison said with a shrug, "but I'm me with a family now, a real family that makes everything different." She paused, then added, "Thank you for answering the phone that night. Thank you for climbing those stairs. Thank you for seeing us when we were invisible." Lawrence felt tears prick his eyes. "Thank you for making that call, for being brave enough and desperate enough to reach out, even if it was in the most dramatic way possible. You saved yourself and your sisters. I just helped. We saved each other," Madison corrected. "I needed you as much as you needed us. That's what family does. We save each other." As the evening wore on, Lawrence stood back and watched his family, with Claire beside him. Madison was attempting to teach a group of adults about quantum physics. The twins were covered in cake and utterly delighted about it. The room was full of laughter and love and hope. "A year ago, I was standing on a construction site, wondering if life had any meaning beyond profit margins," Lawrence said quietly to Claire. "Now I'm here, surrounded by chaos and cake and the most unexpected family imaginable. It's perfect." "It's imperfect," Claire corrected with a smile. "We're messy and complicated, and we're going to drive you crazy sometimes. Madison's intelligence means we'll be fielding calls from teachers who don't know how to challenge her. The twins are entering the boundary testing phase. I still have nightmares about Raymond and poverty. We're not a fairy tale." "No," Lawrence agreed, pulling her close. "We're better than a fairy tale. We're real, and I wouldn't change a single thing." Madison appeared beside them, somehow balancing two sleeping three-year-olds in her arms with the kind of practiced ease that came from years of caring for her younger sisters. "They're exhausted. We should probably head home soon." "Home," Lawrence repeated, savoring the word. "Yes, let's go home." "Oh." Idu. As they left the restaurant, Lawrence carrying Aria while Claire carried Luna and Madison walked between them. He thought about everything that had led to this moment. A desperate child making a dangerous choice. A phone answered by the right person at exactly the right time. A year of growth and healing and learning to be a family. The construction site where it all began was visible in the distance, the riverside tower now nearly complete, its lights glittering against the night sky. Soon it would house offices and shops and people living their ordinary lives, never knowing that in this building's skeletal frame a family had been born from crisis and courage. Madison followed his gaze. "Do you ever think about that night, about how different things could have gone?" "Every day," Lawrence admitted, "but I try not to focus on what could have gone wrong. I'd rather think about what went impossibly, miraculously right." "That's very optimistic for a CEO," Madison teased. "I'm learning," Lawrence said. "From a very wise 8-year-old who taught me that sometimes the most logical thing to do is take a risk on love and family." They reached the car, buckled the sleeping twins into their car seats, and headed home through the Boston streets. As they drove, Lawrence realized that Madison had been right all along. From that first conversation on the construction site, she'd asked if he was going to adopt them, as if she'd already seen the future clearly mapped out. She'd calculated the probability and determined that this family was meant to be. Sometimes, Lawrence thought, the best decisions weren't the carefully planned ones. Sometimes they were the ones made in a moment of crisis, when a child's voice on the phone said words that changed everything. "Daddy, we won't need leftovers anymore." They were done with leftovers now. All of them. They had a real life, a real family, real love that wasn't conditional or scarce. They had abundance, not of money, but of something far more valuable. They had each other, and that, Lawrence finally understood, was everything that truly mattered. As they pulled into the driveway of the Brighton apartment, soon to be replaced by a house Lawrence was purchasing with enough bedrooms for everyone and a yard where the twins could play, Madison spoke up from the back seat. "Hey, Dad," she said, testing out the word that was now legally his. "Yes, Madison? Thank you for not being afraid of us, for not running away when things got complicated, for choosing us." Lawrence looked in the rearview mirror and met his daughter's eyes. "Always, Madison. I'll always choose you. All of you. That's what family means." And for the first time in her 8 years of life, Madison Harper Castellano looked like what she truly was, a child who knew without any doubt that she was safe and loved and protected, not by her own desperate plans, but by a family that would stand together through whatever came next. The leftovers were behind them. The future stretched ahead, bright and uncertain and full of promise, and they would face it together. Lawrence, Claire, Madison, Aria, and Luna, the family that fate had assembled from crisis and courage and one perfectly timed phone call. They were home,